Football really is a simple game. There's really three aspects to it. You execute in the three phases of the game, which is offense, defense, and special teams. You don't turn the ball over. Turnovers kill you. And the third one is you don't hurt your team with dumb penalties. Keep those three things in mind as we go through today's show. Saturday, the Miami Hurricanes lost in the Carrier Dome to Syracuse 42-38. And in the process, they lost out on the ACC title game. And now it's going to be really, really difficult for them to sneak into the 12-team playoff. This is QB Unfiltered, the Cam Ward Experience number 12, the U versus the Orange Men.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up.
Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way right off the bat. At the beginning of the season, it was either after game 1 or game 2, I said that if the Canes continue to make dumbass, selfish, 15-yard personal foul penalties, it was going to cost them in a big game. At the time, I was referring to receiver Jacolby George, and man, I really hate to be right. So in Saturday's loss to Syracuse, George committed another brutally selfish and dumb shit 15-yard penalty, personal foul. It was on a have-to-have-it drive by the Canes, trying to tie it up at 42. That penalty basically, they're knocking on the door in the red zone. That knocked them back and forced them to settle for a field goal, and the final score 42-38. Okay, now to put a cherry on top of this thing, when George was pulled from the game for one play, that's going to teach him a lesson. He was out for one play. As he came to the sideline, he did exactly what I knew he was going to do, and it was beautiful. The cameras followed him all the way to the sideline, where you knew he was going to have to meet either Mario or the receiver coach or Dawson or somebody was going to be in his grill. And George, true to form, almost every guy that I've ever been associated with as a coach, almost every player that commits a stupid 15-yard personal foul does this exact thing that George did. He came to the sideline and he did one of these with his hands like, hey, the guy was a little rough with me. I had to retaliate, one of those things. And he did some stupid stuff like this early in the season. It affected them, but not nearly as bad, obviously, as this one. And, there's a saying in sports that a leopard doesn't change its spots. Man, this one really hurt Miami. Now, I'll touch more on Jacolby George later on in the show. Okay, now that's out of the way. Let's start this as we always do, and that's talking about quarterback Cam Ward. Cam was 25 for 36 for 349 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns and 0 picks. In my opinion, I think that this was one of Cam's best games of the season. He stood in the pocket and he drove the ball. I mean, he threw some absolute lasers. Okay, he made really, really good, smart decisions, whether it was checking the ball down to a running back. There was a time or two where he checked the ball down to one of the shorter receivers, or just pulling it down and running for positive yards, and then getting down smartly and protecting himself and the ball. That's good quarterback play there. And as always, Cam Ward played with total poise and total confidence. He was really in charge the entire game. And when they came out in that first series, I could just tell that he had a little bit different energy and focus to this game, and that he was going to play at his level, which I think he did for the most part. Okay, now I said last week that this was going to be a tennis match between Syracuse's offense and Miami's if the Canes did their job offensively, because Kyle McCord and Syracuse, they can sling it. They know what they're doing in the passing game. And I think Cam more than held up his end of the bargain in this game. In this game, I thought that Cam was in rhythm and tempo for a lot of the time. And I think that Shannon Dawson was one of the major reasons why. All season long, I've been saying that the quick game was pitch and catch for the Canes. And again, in this game, when they ran slants, when they ran stick routes, when they ran option routes, when they ran snag routes, it was completions and move the sticks. And all season long, I've been calling for the crossing routes, and we saw a handful of these in this game that were big gash completions. So in game 12, Dawson decides to start running those deep crossers, and whether it was Restrepo or it was George, those were huge gash plays and completions for Cam Ward and the Canes offense. And all season long, I've said Restrepo owns slot defenders on sail routes. Sail routes is that 15-yard out route that he runs. Slot defenders can't cover it. He scored a touchdown on it in this game. Anytime that they want to run him on that route, that's pitch and catch for him and Cam Ward, and they did that in this game. And all season long, I've said, in my opinion, that Cam Ward operates better when they're going tempo with their offense. They ran a lot of tempo in this game. I just think that he gets into that, I don't want to call it frenetic pace, but he enjoys more just getting up on the ball, snapping it and slinging it or handing it off and getting back up there and doing it again. But tempo really was a nice little weapon for Miami in this game. And all season long, I've said that the Canes need to attack defenses vertically, whether that's outside verticals versus press coverage with no safety help over the top, slot receiver benders versus cover two, slot receiver seam verticals. And Saturday, they ran all of these. And every time the receiver was open, and it was pitch and catch. Dawson came out of the gates attacking vertically in that first drive. He had a Royal running an isolation slot fade. Cam misfired on the play, but the die was cast on that first series. Shannon Dawson was going to attack downfield. And when you do that, when you throw the ball deep, whether you complete balls or not, you start to extend and deepen those safeties. And when they do that, it opens up all of that real estate and grass in front of them and behind the backers in the box, which helps your intermediate passing game. Okay, every week I talk about what I thought were Cam's best throws of the game. I've got about 6 of them in this game, so let's talk about them right now. Number 1 was the sail route that he threw to Restrepo for the second touchdown of the game. He had great feet, great rhythm and tempo. He put that ball right where it needed to go. That was a great throw. Then the corner route that he threw to George in the second quarter, that was a laser shot. Corner routes are one of the tougher throws for quarterbacks because the receiver is running full speed away from them at sort of a difficult angle. So it's kind of a tricky ball, but man, Cam put that thing right on the money. And then he threw a couple of crossing routes to George where they were just BBs, Now, talked about Miami's offensive line. They've gotten better every game. I don't think Syracuse had the most dynamic pass rush in the world. But when Cam was able to take his drop, 1, 2, 3, hitch and throw, right? He was throwing absolute seeds on some of those crossing routes to George. Then he threw an incompletion to Lofton where it was in the second quarter, and Lofton he either didn't turn his head soon enough to locate the ball, or he lost the ball in the lights. It was hard to tell, but Cam threw a great ball to Lofton on that was incomplete. And then the slant route that Horton dropped in the fourth quarter, man, that was a seed right on him, right in stride, and Isaiah Horton dropped the rock. That was a great throw. And then, again, I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but the check down he threw to his running back on the first series of the game, those are all positive throws. Anytime he can do that, I'm going to put that in one of his best throws category. Nothing's there downfield. Check the ball down. Let your running back get positive yardage or pick up the first down. Okay, and then there's a throw that Cam probably wishes he had back, and that was he missed Restrepo on an uncovered little hand grenade toss out there down on the goal line. You know, the ball was inside the 5-yard line, and Miami went tempo, and this is one of the things that tempo does to defense. Syracuse couldn't get lined up, and Restrepo is out in the slot to the left, and he's uncovered. There's nobody on him. Miami's going fast. Cam saw it, and all Restrepo did was just turn and sort of shuffle off the line of scrimmage, and Cam tried to hand grenade it out there, and he just misfired on the ball. So he missed a chance to throw a touchdown pass. They ended up scoring, you know, on the next play, handing the ball off. But I think that he wishes he could have had that one back. Now, last week I did a segment on how Dawson needed to attack coverages when they line up in trips, and the defense lines up with 2 against Miami's 3 receivers. So Miami has the 3-on-2 advantage. And in this game, he did attack that with punch screens and stick routes. So well done, Shannon Dawson. Okay, now I've got to talk about Syracuse's passing game at this point in time. You know, first and foremost, their offensive coordinator, Jeff Nixon, he knows what he's doing. And in my opinion, this guy is one of the best he's the best OC I've seen go against Miami this year as far as how he attacks coverage, how he attacks leverage, how he attacks alignment, and how he attacks personnel with the passing game. The other thing is their receivers are really well coached. Their skill players are good. And when I say that their receivers are well coached, it's in a lot of different areas. You know, physically, they run great routes. So they attack leverage, whether it's the cornerback or the slot defender. They get DBs and linebackers' hips turned by stemming inside and breaking outside, or stemming outside and breaking inside. They get rid of hands. They catch the ball clean. You know, one of the things that the analyst said, Kirk Morrison said, that Syracuse's receivers win contested throws. And contested throws are the balls that are 50-50 throws, meaning that 50% of the time the receiver can come down with it, 50% of the time the DB or the defensive guy can come down with it. But with Syracuse, their receivers almost always come down with contested throws. That's a coachable behavior. That's drill work and practice. That's mechanics and technique, but it's also what is in their mind and what is being coached to them by the OC and the receiver coach. It's a mindset. It's an expectation. It's a toughness level. There's a difference between Syracuse outside receivers and Miami's outside receivers in physicality, how they run routes, full speed running routes, catching the ball clean with their hands, going up and making plays on contested throws, blocking on screens, blocking on the perimeter. Syracuse is well coached at the receiver position. And then it wasn't a lot of deep cuts with his passing game against Miami's secondary. It was a bunch of small little cuts along the way, which eventually led to their defense bleeding out. So, I mean, they made a living on Saturday running little stick routes, little option routes, angle routes, slant routes, under routes, just quick game stuff where they worked on Miami's coverage, their leverage in coverage, their alignment in the coverage. And like I said, every time Miami went into man-to-man, they went after certain guys and tried to use and abuse them. Okay, one aspect of Syracuse pass game that flies under the radar is they play with 5 receivers. Okay, and this was fun to watch. This was the type of guy that I always look for to play running back for me when I coached. Running back LaQuint Allen, man, that guy's got skills. And he obviously can run the ball in their running game. but he is a receiver playing at the running back position, and that is such a huge weapon to have. I mean, he tooled Miami's linebackers on a couple of option routes coming out of the backfield. But anytime that they went into 5 wideouts, he was to the 2 receiver side playing in the slot, and he tooled those guys out there too, running option routes and angle routes. I'm going to show you on the board here in a second, but that's such a huge weapon to have in your passing game, is not only the 4 receivers out there, but your running back. And I'm not just talking about a guy that's catching checkdowns. I'm talking about a guy that you can use as an isolation receiver against linebackers, and he's the only read for the quarterback, and he wins every time you call the routes. Okay, one of the great weapons that Syracuse had at their disposal was the fact that they could line up in 5 wideouts, not substitute a receiver in, keep the running back in the game. And this dude right here operated on this linebacker all night long out of this formation. Miami would go in or stay in 2 safeties high with a 4-man front, and you can see what happens and what that does to the box. It empties the box, okay? And if they're playing zone, which they did on just a couple of snaps, this linebacker is going to be playing inside leverage, all right? He doesn't want this guy to cross his face and beat him inside. So he's playing out inside leverage, which gives the running back all kinds of room and grass outside. And if they're playing man-to-man, he's going to be playing inside leverage. And this is a mismatch. An athlete, a guy that can run, and Syracuse's running backs had great receiver skills. This is no contest. So they ran 2 routes out of this look, and this is the one that they ran probably 5 times in the game, 6 times in the game. It was money every time. So it didn't matter what was going on the 3 receiver side. The game was over here. This is an isolation play for the back, all right? So the outside receiver with either outside release vertical or inside release vertical, either way, he's getting the corner out of there. And then the running back's running a 5-yard out route. So he would stem it off the snap, drive it upfield to 5 yards, get this linebacker to start building that vertical wall. And as soon as this guy starts to get any type of depth, it's over. At 5, he sticks that inside foot and toe in the ground and bursts it outside. McCord, easy pitch and catch. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. Easy money for Syracuse. They ran this, and then they came back and hit Miami with this one. So on the snap, the back releases upfield on that vertical stem for about 3 steps. This linebacker, what's he think he's seeing? That out route, could possibly see a seam, all right? Either way, he's on the move, okay? And then this running back just sticks his outside foot in the ground after 3 steps and breaks it underneath, inside on the slant route, and there's no one in the box. Play catch, big play, gash play, easy money. And this is how you know your passing game, your skill guys are really well coached. You got Syracuse's running back, LaQuint Allen, and we talked about them lining him up in the slot to the 2 receiver side when they go 5 wide out and running him on these man option routes, which turn into a 5-yard out route. Watch what he does here. Now, keep in mind, this is a running back. He's got an option route here. So on the snap of the ball, as he's stemming it to 5 yards, he can sense that that corner now is sitting there in the flat. So instead of sticking his toe and bursting outside, which he did against man, he just pivots and sits down there in grass, and boom, McCord sticks it to him. Pitch and catch, that's how the play is designed to work. But this is a running back that not only can hurt you running the ball, but has great receiving skills and receiver knowledge on how to decipher coverage and run routes like a wideout. That's a weapon. And that really right there tells you how sophisticated and how well coached Syracuse's passing game is. Okay, and then lastly, with their passing game, I mean, quarterback Kyle McCord, he's damn good. You know, the things that stood out to me in this game, he's really poised. You know, him and Cam are like the same dudes as far as that goes. You know, he had the same expression the whole game. He didn't get too fired up. He never went in the tank. He just went out there and did his job. Now, his mechanics are really good. He's got great feet. Whether he was taking a 3-step drop, 3-in hitch, or GST, he had a great platform when he threw the ball for the most part. And then his accuracy was really on the money. You know, he made some difficult throws when they're running those outside receivers on vertical routes where he's throwing a 1. And a couple of times, you know, they're specifically working on Miami's corner where the receiver would release outside and get the corner to turn his hips outside like he's running a outside release vertical. And then he would snap it inside of him and the cornerbacks beat and then go vertically. And McCord's not putting air underneath those. He was throwing them on a rope. And again, that is a difficult throw when a receiver's going full speed away from you and you have no margin of error with your throw. You throw it on a rope like that with smoke coming out of the back of the football, it's got to be right on the receiver or else it's incomplete. And he was putting the ball on his guys all day long. And then the last thing about Syracuse pass game, they're able to do what they do with an offensive line that was a little suspect in their pass protection. You know, their 2 tackles were always on the verge of getting their ass beat the entire day on pass protection. And I think that they ran so much quick game and the ball was out of McCord's hand so fast that it really didn't cause him any problems. But I was really, really impressed with Syracuse passing game. They are a well-coached offensive team. Okay, here's some random thoughts on the game. I'm going to start with the Canes defense. Now, I would imagine that they've got a coach in the booth on a headset that's talking down to Guidry on the sideline that is only responsible for calling out personnel group changes on Syracuse's offense. So, for example, when Syracuse runs their 3 tight end personnel into the game, that information comes down to Guidry and he can run his big defensive personnel in the game to match it. But there was a snap or two in the game on Saturday where they ran those 3 big dudes in and Miami stayed in their nickel package, meaning that they had like 5 DBs in the game, bunch of little dudes who are quote unquote cover guys, but not, you know, bowing their neck and coming up there and making tackles on the run game. So that was kind of a surprise to me. Okay. And then with that 3 tight end package, they ran in the 4th quarter. They brought that in down on the goal line. They were overloaded on Syracuse's right side with 2 extra tight ends, but Miami's defense was like shifted the other way. And you know that that's a problem when Syracuse turns and hands the ball off and the running back goes in untouched. So you basically have 22 guys within a 6 or 7 yard square and he goes in untouched. That tells you defensively that they are misaligned bad. That shouldn't happen. I know that people have been saying this all season long. We got to say it again because it happened. And when you're playing a team that knows how to attack you defensively, if you've got a corner that has problems playing man-to-man, don't play him man-to-man. The OC for Syracuse, Nixon, would see man coverage press and boom, they're going vertical and attacking that guy with vertical route, and they hurt them in the second half with some throws. I'm going to draw up the play on the board here. This one is just a head scratcher to me. It's hard to tell whether this is a scheme problem or whether the outside linebacker just brain jammed on this, but you can't blitz a guy who also is responsible for the running back if he hot releases on a route. Just doesn't work. So again, head scratcher. Okay, now this is really, really unsound. And I don't know if this is scheme, which 50-50 on that, or this guy right here from Miami just brain jams. But they're in a cover zero look, all right? They're bringing people. They've got everybody locked up across the board. This guy right here who's standing up has got the running back in man-to-man, all right? The problem is this. On the snap of the ball, this guy blitzes. The running back is running a hot release shoot route. So this guy who's got the back, man-to-man, does one of these. Oh, shit. Right? So we're going to blitz. He sees his guy run the shoot route, and then he's got to put on the brakes and try to run with the shoot, which he can't. McCord just spits it out to the back, and they've got a chunk play. So this is either poor design, poor scheme, or you've got a guy that brain jams and just has a mental bust. Either way, these are the type of things that have hurt Miami's defense all season long. Okay, and then this one is really amazing to me. So Syracuse throws like a 41, 42-yard touchdown pass, and it gets called back for an illegal formation. But let's look at what's happening on this play. Syracuse lines up in their formation, and the slot receiver down here to the left is uncovered. So in reality, you've got two guys that absolutely brain jammed on this play. You've got the dude that's supposed to be on the slot receiver here to the left that's on the other side of the field. And then right before the snap, you can see Mawanoa sprinting outside to cover the outside receiver. Now, that's pretty bad. You know, you're playing man coverage and you got two guys that don't know where they're going or who they're locked up with, what side of the ball or what side of the formation they're supposed to be on. This is a mess. Okay, now Syracuse, you know, they're good. They know what they're doing. And this is probably a deal where their coach is either going, okay, just throw it to this slot guy. He's yelling it out there on the field. Or the slot guy's going, hey, Kyle, throw it to me. There's nobody on me. Either way, they throw the little out route to the slot who has nobody on him, even though Miami's in man coverage, and he goes for a touchdown and gets called back for illegal formation. But that is an amazing play defensively and really something that their defense has done to some degree the entire season long. Okay, and then finally with the defense, you know, at the end of the game there, it's 42-38. And Syracuse needs a first down to run the clock out. This is what is called nut cutting time. We used to call it want to time. This is want to time for the Canes defense. You got to want to go out there and make plays, make tackles, make them punt and get the damn ball back. But that didn't happen. You know, Syracuse just ran it, did whatever they wanted to do, and ran the clock out. So that was pretty fitting for Miami's defense to go out that way in the game. Okay, the Miami special teams. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week, and some guys on Twitter, on X, had said, you know, they've heard that the Canes coaches don't put a lot of emphasis on special teams, which is really brutal if that is in fact going on. But here's some things with special teams. On punt return, you have to catch the ball in the air as a punt returner. You can't let the ball hit the ground. If you can make the catch, you have to make the catch. Okay, research has shown, and they've done studies on this, when the punt returner lets the ball hit the ground, 75% of the time it rolls against the return team. And now we're talking field position. Okay, so the other day in the game, Hurricane deep guy lets the ball bounce instead of going up and fair catching it, and that thing rolls against him and goes all the way down, like inside the 10-yard line. Okay. That's special teams 101 right there. And then when you're punting, and if you're using a rugby style scheme and your punter is going to roll to the right, which means your line is also going to be moving to the right with the punter, your punter can't stop and either try to kick the ball or move back to his left and kick the ball, because anybody coming off the edge to the punter's left is unblocked. But Miami did that one in the game as well. Now, we always said, kickoff returns is an offensive play. It's a weapon, but you got to work on it in practice. Why would you fair catch a ball on the 2 or 3 yard line and start your drive on the 25 as opposed to actually setting up a kickoff return and trying to bust it up their ass or run it back to the 40 or 45 or midfield? I don't get that. Okay, let's talk about Xavier Restrepo. Now, they got the rock to him in this game. Okay, he had 9 grabs for 148 yards and 1 touchdown. He should have had 2 TDs. That second one that they called him out of bounds on, I can't believe the replay guys didn't overrule that. His knee was not down. It was on top of the guy. It was on top of a defender as that ball was breaking the plane and clipping the pylon in the corner of the end zone. That should have been a touchdown. But for as good a game as Xavier had for the second week in a row, he got stripped on a punch screen, and man, that can't happen. And this one was a killer. When you talk about execution with your offense, this is what we're talking about on what has been frustrating about Miami all year long. They throw a punch screen out to Xavier. He's got the first down, but he gets stripped, which can't happen. And it's a scoop and score. Okay? Huge, huge play. Now, with Restrepo, let's talk about ball security. Okay? Now, I've been talking him all year long. He's their best receiver, their most consistent receiver. I think their best weapon. Doesn't matter what routes he's running. He knows how to get open, and he's got good hands. He consistently catches the ball. His ball security, though, his touchdown catch on that sail route, watch what he does when we show the replay on this, where he's going to start to extend the ball with one hand to try to reach it over the goal line. That's when you get stuff knocked out of your hand. TJ Moe, who played at the University of Missouri and played in the NFL for the New England Patriots and Belichick, he was on Jason Whitlock's podcast, and they were talking about guys doing that and how many times they get the ball knocked out of their hand. And he was saying that when he was a rookie and went into his first receiver meeting, Belichick got up in front of the receivers and said, any of you guys that did this in college or did it in high school where you're reaching out with one hand down inside, the 10-yard line, trying to get it across the end zone, we don't do that in New England. You will not do that here. We're going to have ball security. If you can't score securing the ball, good. We'll line up and run another play and we'll score on the next play. So, take that for what it's worth, but Xavier, man, that fumble was a killer. Ball security, that stuff is coachable, coached behavior for the Canes. Okay, that's coached behavior. Just like some of the stuff I'm going to talk about when I talk about Jacolby George later on. Damian Martinez, he's a beast. Okay, I've said this every game in my show the following Monday or Tuesday. He is a beast. All right. Now, in this game, if you take Fletcher's carries, which were 13, and you take Lyle's, which were 3, and you give those to Martinez, He only had 10 carries. He had 84 yards on 10 carries. Give him Fletcher's carries and let him be the guy. He ran for 80 some yards and he had a 60 some yarder called back. That's 11 carries for 140 yards right there, right? And if you give him Fletcher's carries, he's going to rack up some yards. So he's your big dog in the backfield. Use him, which means play him and give him the football. And again, let's say it's even 10 more carries, 10 of Fletcher's carries. And you give that to Martinez, what could he do with those carries? I've said this a couple of times this year. I think that the two outside receivers for Miami have hurt them this season, that being George and Horton. In this game, Horton was pretty much invisible, 2 catches for 13 yards. And George, he had good numbers statistically, but he just does some stuff that drives me up a wall and hurts Miami. And let's talk about that right now. He's consistent because he's done this all year long. And it's not just the 15-yard personal foul, taunting, doing stupid stuff on the field and getting penalties. But it's these two other things that he does too that drives me crazy. The first one is every time that he's on the outside and Restrepo's in the slot and they're running Restrepo on either a little quick out or they're running him on the deeper sail route, and they've got George running the vertical on the outside, George jogs his route and then stops. So if Restrepo breaks a tackle, wheels it upfield, isn't close enough to the end zone to get in and score as soon as he turns it upfield, he's going to have to deal with that cornerback that should be long gone if George would just run a full speed vertical and do his job. And again, that's coached behavior right there. That's allowed to happen for him. And so he does it. And that drives me nuts. I think that's another difference between Miami's receivers and Syracuse's receivers. Okay. And then the second thing that he does that I really have a problem with, he is their biggest big play receiver. He's a starting receiver, which means his butt needs to be on the field playing. How many times this year has Jacolby George taken himself out of the game with a perceived nick, all right, and stood on the sideline for a handful of plays or so and then came back on the field and played? That drives me crazy. He did it twice against Georgia Tech. He had a little something with his hand. He had a little something where he fell on his chest after a tackle. Both times he got up and walked off the field like he was walking in the park on a Sunday. The second time that he did it, when he was laying on the ground, they had a close-up of Cam Ward, and he looked at him and just shook his head. So in the game Saturday, he runs out of the back of the end zone. He's on the ground, and he's tangled up with some television cable, wire, whatever, wrapped around his foot. No big deal. They unwrap the cord. But then he taps out of the game and walks off the field and goes stands on the sideline. I'm like, what in the hell are you doing? And again, that's coach behavior. I think that one thing that probably would have got this out of Jacolby George's system this year is the first time that he tried to do that, they just stood him on the sideline for about a quarter just to make sure that he was really okay before they put him back in the game. That seems to really eliminate that behavior by receivers. Okay, and then with that dumbass penalty that he had, which killed them in the fourth quarter, I go back to last week's game. Mark Jones, who, in my opinion, is one of the worst play-by-play college football, one of the worst, not even college football, because he does basketball too. He's one of the worst play-by-play guys ever. in the history of bad play-by-play guys. When Lyle scored that touchdown and then got a 15-yard taunting penalty, and all that did was make the Canes move back 15 yards to kick off, which meant field position, right? Well, when he does that, he makes that stupid decision to taunt the guy in the end zone. Mark Jones goes, and I'm paraphrasing him here, well, the playmaker didn't have any problem with that. He's talking about Michael Irvin. He didn't have any problem with that, so I guess we're okay. Well, Mark, I wonder how the playmaker felt about Jacolby George's personal foul in Saturday's game. So, guys, in a nutshell, head coach Mario Cristobal said it best. And this was at the end of the third quarter when one of the obnoxious sideline reporters stuck a mic in his face to ask him what they needed to do in this game. He hit the nail on the head. He just looked at her and said, execute routine plays. So no matter how poor the defense has played all season long, the offense continued this season to execute at about 85% in games. And those 15% that they didn't, those were killers. So how do drives get bogged down? Well, let's take a look at this game Saturday. You got Martinez with a 60-yard run that gets wiped out by a penalty, and on the next play, Cam Ward gets sacked. That's that drive out the window. Xavier Restrepo catching a punch screen for a first down, but then getting stripped, scoop and score. You get the Canes driving to try to tie the game up, and you get Jacolby George with a I don't care about my teammates 15-yard personal foul. Those types of things bog down offensive drives. And I've been saying this all season long. I thought that Miami could overcome the deficiencies on defense by just going out and executing on offense. They were that good. Okay, so the Canes are going to have to watch the ACC title game on TV now and hope that they can, get in through the back door in this 12-team playoff, or they're just going to have to wait and see what bowl game they're going to go play in a ACC tied into bowl game. This has been totally frustrating, I'm sure, for Canes fans, but hopefully you guys didn't take this season for granted or have the frustration wipe out what you saw this season. And what you saw was a quarterback, Cam Ward, who's a special dude, a special guy. You're not going to see a guy like Cam Ward come through Coral Gables very often. And he still has at least one more game to play, maybe two. You never know how it's going to work out, but let's just enjoy the final ride, however it goes. I'm going to be obviously talking about Cam Ward until he is done with his Miami career. But just know that you guys watched for 12, 13, maybe 14 games possibly this season. A guy that doesn't come along very often in college football. Okay, and then some final quick thoughts, and I'll get out of here. The college football overtime rules suck. Okay, that 8 overtime game the other night between Georgia and Georgia Tech, when they start doing overtimes or they put each team on the 3-yard line, that's ridiculous. Okay, here's what you do. You just go back to putting the ball on the 10. You got 4 downs to either score a touchdown or kick a field goal. All right, and you got to match scores or you lose the game. Okay, that's the best way to do it. That's exciting. You got 10 yards to work with plus 10 yards of the end zone, 20 yards to run your offense. That's the best way to do it. But this going for 2 points, that is crap. And then finally, we had a couple of games this weekend where we had some stupid flag planting stuff after the game. The bad one, obviously, was Michigan, Ohio State, where police officers had to use pepper spray on players. That's embarrassing. Okay, this is on the head coaches. Head coaches, get control of your team. If you beat your opponent on their field, shake their hands after the game, celebrate with your fans, respect the other team's field, and get your butt off the field into the locker room. and celebrate some more. But that's a bad look. That's a bad look for Ohio State and Michigan. That's a bad look for college football. And that's on the head coaches. Okay, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if this is your first time, and drop me a comment below and let me know what you thought of the Canes and Syracuse. This is QB Unfiltered, and remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.